Welcome to Midco Sports Magazine. Our theme this month is overcoming obstacles. And a lot of people would look at that and see a huge obstacle. But everybody in our show this month would see it as a challenge to be overcome. We have a team of wrestlers in Jamestown, North Dakota. They are as tough and as hard-nosed as any squad you will find, and they just happen to be women. We've got a Minnesota man who grew up playing golf with his father. It was their bond, it was their connection. But he lost his father, and then he lost his arm in a work accident. He thought he had lost everything, but he is back in the swing of things now with the help of a Sioux Falls doctor. But we start this month with a South Dakota native named Makenzie Hageman. She is already one of the best sprinters ever at Northern State University in Aberdeen. And she has accomplished a lot, but it is her greatness that comes from the ability just to be ordinary, not extraordinary. David Brown explains.
It's Halloween on the campus of Northern State University, supposedly the one time of the year where you can pretend to be somebody you're not. And yet, despite the costume of Where's Waldo, Makenzie Hageman is being herself, laughing with teammates and enjoying a relaxed track practice.
They're a great group of kids and they really care about each other, and we just have a really good team environment at Northern.
Backwards scooter races and Nerf javelin throws aren't exactly the best training for sprinters like Makenzie. In fact, most competitors believe that no practice can live up to the sights and sounds of that quick race down the track. But Makenzie doesn't see it that way. She doesn't hear it that way either.
And I want other deaf people to be able to look to me as a role model, that they can do it as well. If I'm doing it, they can look to me and know that they can do it.
With the help of interpreter Alyssa Bean, Makenzie makes one thing perfectly clear. She may not use all of her senses, but common sense, as well as hard work, make her unstoppable.
And she's so driven, and that really helps. The fact that you can tell just how determined she is, and it really rubs off on her teammates. She's actually lifting the group up because she just works so hard, and even with a few aches and pains, really is good at pushing through it and fighting through a few things, and it's been great for the team.
Makenzie was born deaf, but she had plenty of support from her friends and family. Her older brother Cody piqued her interest in track, and from there she took off. And while running came naturally, the timing and cadence of a race presents a unique challenge.
Someone has to tap my foot to tell me set, and then I can hear the gun, so I am able to hear that part. So then I just take off when I hear it.
We knew she was fast, but we didn't really know exactly how she worked with the gun sound and how she started and everything, so that was a learning process for us that she kind of had to teach us how she starts and gets in the set position in the blocks and everything. And
whatever her methods are, they work. In her first 2 years at Northern State, Makenzie already has the school record in the 60 and 100 meter dash. She also won a silver medal in the 4x100 relay at the 2013 Deaf Olympics in Bulgaria.
It's really impressive how well she gets out of the blocks, and I'm assuming she's got kind of a knack to just drown everything out.
Her different senses kick in, and I think they allow her to even push forward even more. She makes up for what she can't hear.
The language of track is universal, and Makenzie's teammates and coaches also work to make off-the-field communication as smooth as her glide across the finish line.
It's wonderful, it's great. They love sign language, they think it's a beautiful language, they want to learn, and so I've been teaching them some signs, and the cooperation and rapport is wonderful.
At practice time we have Alyssa there, so we definitely use her to the fullest extent. But she can read lips, so that's very, very helpful. Most of the athletes, they're starting to pick up certain sign language cues and stuff too, so that's been very helpful.
I mean, there are some communication barriers, and she's definitely inspired quite a few of her teammates and coaches to slowly learn some sign language just so we can communicate a little bit better with her.
So that's what I'd like you to do first.
Outside the track, Makenzie's just like every other student at Northern State, going to class, doing homework, and working to keep herself in shape.
The coaches and the other athletes, they have they don't mind, you know, giving me a little support, or they don't look at me as someone who can't do something. Oh, that I'm deaf. They treat me equally. Everyone's very friendly. They feel comfortable to come up to me, approach me.
The girls have just really rallied around her and are really good about, you know, hanging out with her and communicating the best they can with her, and I think she's really enjoying her new teammates.
It would be easy to say Makenzie has hurdled over every obstacle she's encountered. But the truth is, she doesn't even see obstacles, she sees opportunities, both to accept the fact that she's different and to embrace the reality of why that matters. So if anyone still wants to know where to find Makenzie, she's been right here all along, fitting in and standing out.
Definitely inspiration for me to coach, and you know, I know the same goes for all our athletes. So they're pretty amazed by what she can do.
I think the best part is to just be able to tell people not to set up, like not to have any kind of, that they can do anything you want and that you're just a regular person, not to feel like you're inhibited by anything, and don't set up any limitations on yourself. You know, don't feel like you have to step back and say, oh, I can't do that, but just to go ahead and get involved and to think positive, have a positive attitude.
Joined by David Brown, and David, for Makenzie, already off to a wonderful career at Northern State. What's she got coming up in the next couple of years?
Well, obviously 2 more years left at Northern State, and then in 2017 she's going to compete at another Deaf Olympics, this time in the country of Turkey. But her goal throughout the rest of her life is just to continue being an inspiration for other deaf people, other deaf athletes. She has this great ability, as we saw, to just fit in with everyone else, be treated just like anyone else, but also understand that she is special and unique and different, and use that to inspire others.
All right, we wish her the best. Nice story.
Thank you.
David Brown. Up next on Midco Sports Magazine, we'll go to North Dakota, where this group of athletes is breaking glass ceilings and busting down walls just to get on the mat. It's the women's wrestling team at the University of Jamestown. Welcome back to Midco Sports Magazine. Our theme this month is overcoming obstacles. And it wasn't that many years ago that it was unheard of to have a women's college wrestling program at your local school or university. But there are now more than 20 such programs in the United States. One of them, you might be surprised to know, is in Jamestown, North Dakota. Greg Ankers is there with the story.
The University of Jamestown offers many of the same athletics programs you'll find anywhere across the country. But for 24 student athletes here, they get the opportunity to compete in a sport you simply don't find just anywhere in the United States. The name of the game is women's wrestling, but don't let your unfamiliarity of the sport fool you. This is far from a novelty here on campus.
As I was watching, it took about one portion of one match, and I saw how hard those young ladies competed against each other. From that point on, to me, it just simply was another athletic program where our students are competing, and it's been that kind of an attitude with me ever since. And the more that people get accustomed to it, and the more that they see it, understand how hard these kids train, they're very serious about what they do.
The program is running close to a decade long now, and its startup took a fraction of that time. Despite being a very unique concept, the university was intrigued from the beginning.
Our men's wrestling coach at the time was a man by the name of Cisco Cole. Came to me one day and threw an idea out at me about women's wrestling. I had not heard of women's wrestling at the time, but it had just become an Olympic sport. I have to admit that I was a little bit skeptical about the idea, but I asked him to put together a business plan. I asked him to put together some rationale for doing this so that it could be presented to the administration, and in very short order. A budget was created and a plan was presented, and Coach Cole began recruiting. Within the first year, there were 10 female wrestlers on campus. The program was launched, and it has done nothing but grow ever since.
The action on the mat is parallel to men's wrestling, with several weight classes and the same scoring system. Figuring out the details is easy. Getting athletes to North Dakota, however, can be a challenge. With most of the sanctioned high school programs on the coasts, the roster is filled with athletes from New York and Florida to California and even Hawaii.
When you get athletes that come from warm weather climates, and obviously they come here and, it's in the beginning, it's a little bit of a shock, but it's a great place to just develop mental toughness in that aspect because our sport is tough. I'm not going to say it's any tougher than any other sport, but the things that are expected of them, on and off the mat, it takes a special person to be able to balance it all on their plate.
Two standouts that made the move to the Great Plains are seniors Shy Mason and Amy Fernside, and they have no regrets about their decision.
My family, they were very surprised. They were very surprised in my decision. Going from Los Angeles to Jamestown, North Dakota, they're like, where is that? What's happening? Who's out there? They're like, okay, we're gonna let you do this. We're gonna let you try it out. If you want to come home at any time, you can. It meant a lot to know that they were supporting me in going to school and doing a sport, which is a lot on my plate.
They understood that there's more abroad that I should go after, and my parents were very supportive of it. It took a month for me to decide which college I wanted to go to, and this wasn't an easy choice, but I'm really glad I picked the right choice.
In addition to the unique makeup of this team, they're also led by a one-of-a-kind tandem. Tony Deonda is in his 4th year at the helm, along with his assistant Danielle, who happens to share Deonda's last name as his wife.
It balances out between her and I. When I'm gone, she can still run practice for the athletes that stay behind. She helps out in a lot of different ways in terms of running our tournaments. The tournament that we have, she does a lot of the legwork, our camps. So she's like our tournament director, our camp director, and it just helps spread out just the workload that we have and makes it more enjoyable.
We have a different dynamic, I guess, than a normal assistant head coach relationship would be, but I think it's good. He, sometimes is more of the hammer, and I am a woman figure, so I can give things a little bit in a different perspective, So I think that helps the girls in the wrestling room. Maybe they don't feel comfortable talking to him about something, but then they could talk to me about something. So it is a unique dynamic.
The teamwork from the top to the bottom is reflected where this team is on the national level. The Jimmies have finished in the top 5 in 4 of the past 6 seasons, and they're expecting to have a couple individuals competing for a national championship this year.
We have 4 returning All-Americans, and 2 of them were runner-ups. So, obviously if they do their job, they're in a position to win it. And then we have another athlete that placed 3rd 2 years ago, and she's in a situation where she could possibly be in the mix to win it as well.
In addition to the success that the team has had individually, the Jimmies left their mark on the national scene back in 2009, just their 3rd year in existence, when Tani Adler won her national championship here. It's that kind of individual effort, along with the effort from the team, that is going to ensure that this program is here to stay at the University of Jamestown.
When we come back on Midco Sports Magazine, a Minnesota man who built a love and a bond with his father and the game of golf. So what happens when they are both taken away by tragedy? His story coming up next. Welcome back to Midco Magazine. Well, sports and games can be a great connection and a bond between generations, and that is the case in our next story, where the game of golf has kept a father and son connected through trials and tragedy. What is your connection to someone you love? An activity or an action that bonds you and a parent or a spouse or a friend? For Glenn Anderson and his dad, it was the game of golf.
Once in a while we'd take my mom, but most of the time it was just he and I. And it was a lot of silence. We just walked, had a good time with each other. Sometimes just spending time with someone, even if there's few words, just quality time. And that's what we had.
His father was his hero, and when his dad died of cancer in the early 90s, Glenn suffered the first big loss of his life.
It changed golf dramatically for me. The first thing I did was gather up his golf clubs and put them in the trunk of my car. And they stayed there for years because I didn't golf for years.
He did start up again, but there was always something missing, and sometimes too much of something else.
Everyone else I would try and golf with after a few years, it was too much talking, too much. It just wasn't the same course.
In the years since Glenn got on with his life, he worked and got married. She already had 4 kids, and together they have 2 more, including a son. And then Glenn suffered a second huge loss. He was working at an ag processing plant and was trying to clear a clog in a machine when he got his hand caught between 2 serrated rollers.
My hand went in, and these are rolling downwards. And it didn't hurt. It was the weirdest thing. It didn't hurt. I remember looking at my hand quickly as it got pulled out of the machine and realized that it was flapping in the air. So that was the only sight I had seen in my hand until the cast came off and I had this. But in my mind, I still had a hand.
He went through months of denial and depression, but he had the strong support of his wife to help him find a way out of the funk.
I'm a brute, and I push him, and we get into screaming matches. And every time he even thinks that he wants to give up, I just stomp harder. Because no matter what, I'm not going to let him give up.
Glenn came to realize that he had to adjust. He would have to learn how to redo things. And one day, somehow, he might be able to teach his kids one of his father's favorite games.
Golf was the one sport specifically I wanted to pass on to my children, whether it was the 14-year-old down to the 2-year-old. I didn't think I was going to be able to do that.
Everybody's got to have something. I have the kids, I have my stupid little hobbies. It seemed like everything that he had was ripped away from him, and I had to find some way so that he could have something of his old life back.
Several months after the accident, Glenn was in for what he thought was a routine appointment with Dr. Tim Lee Burton.
And I walked in the office, and Doc is over there screwing in things and working on this little device, and I just sat down thinking it was still a normal appointment. He was doing that for something else. And he came over and he said, "You want to go golfing today?" What? Well, it turns out my wife had snuck my golf clubs in the back of the car. They had bought this golfing prosthesis, expensive golfing prosthesis, may I say, and we fitted it that day, and we went golfing.
Clara and Dr. Lee Burton had been looking a long time for a device like this, and Clara says that she was originally going to buy Glenn a grill for Father's Day and their anniversary, but decided that this was a better gift.
And the only thing I could even remotely possibly think of, you know, when Tim found the company and Tim told me the price, and it was the only thing I could think of, that it was like, I know that this would work. That was the one thing, no matter what the price was, he was gonna get it. I didn't really care what it was gonna cost.
Glenn still carries his dad's old 2-iron in his golf bag, and he says that when he started to play again, the swing and the memories all started to come back to him.
It took like 3 or 4 until I really got the hang of it, and I hit a nice shot. And I looked up and said, "That one's for you, Dad. That one's for you." And it just seems like ever since, every shot. It's hard to explain. Hard to explain. I mean, you never lose a parent, even though they passed on. But somehow, some of those experiences from childhood when you're doing them, they're there. They're there. And golfing is that for me.
Glenn says he doesn't have a handicap or a disability. He just had an accident and suffered a setback. And as Clara says, she and her husband had their lives ripped apart for a long time, and it takes a long time to put it all back together.
the dynamics in the family, we're all still just trying to figure it out. We're all trying to figure out who we are anymore. He's just as changed as I am. All we can do is just keep on working forward.
Well, before we go, an update on a story we ran on a previous episode of Midco magazine about Ed Thomas, an ultra marathon runner. He has run 4 100-mile runs in just the last 12 months alone. When we met him, he had just finished 360th in the Leadville 100 in Colorado. This time around, though, he chopped that down to 80th place.
I think I trained better, had good support as well, and came in under 25 this year, cut off almost about 4 hours off my time from last year and came in at 24:41. I really love the ultra community, and I really, really love running the longer distances. I mean, marathons are great, but running longer than that, and 100-milers have become my favorite race by far. And I think it's really the camaraderie between everybody.
Well, Ed's goal, he says, is to keep on working on his time and maybe run a 150 or even a 200-mile race in the future. We wish him well. Our thanks to Glenn Anderson, Makenzie Hageman, and the University of Jamestown women's wrestling team. We'll see you next time on Midco Sports Magazine.